Find the thing that you love,
Yeah.
and then try and be as good at that as you possibly can.
But our system today makes them do, if they're not good at maths, it makes them do double maths.
Until they're 18.
They have to do more, not less of it. And then they're not allowed to do the thing they love.
It's crackers. First speech I gave, Mike, it was in '93. I was absolutely terrified. But you know what happened?
Go on.
I came off stage, I said, I love this. I'd found the thing that I was good at.
Boris or Rishi?
Gosh, I suppose it's a really hard one. As Prime Minister, Rishi. As somebody to spend time with, Boris.
Good morning and welcome back to Success is a System. I'm Mike Greene and I'm really honoured today to have someone who I now call a great friend, Nigel Farage. We got to know each other a few years ago when the whole Brexit thing was going on, and it was an amazing experience for me to go through that and to get to know Nigel and to get to know what a genuine character he was. And with Success as a System, what we want to understand is the motivations, the behaviours, the systems that people use throughout their life to achieve the success that they do. And so today I want to explore that with Nigel, and we're going to cover a lot of other things as we go through. But firstly, welcome, Nigel. Thank you for joining.
Good to be here, and well done with what you're doing.
Oh, well, thank you. And it is an education, and I think, as I sort of mentioned to a lot of people are trying to sell the secrets of success, and I'm trying to say, actually, success leaves clues, and there's lots of systems or people or examples that you can follow if you want to be successful. And it's not just about the academia, it's about the experience, the wisdom, and the behaviours of others that we can follow. So I want to get into that.
Yeah, let's do it.
People think they know Nigel Farage, and they may, if they've followed you obsessively, know the politician Nigel Farage, or think they do. But I want to understand a little bit about you before politics, when you was at school, what your motivations were, about the early career, and I guess if you can give us a bit of an outline up to your decision to go into politics, and then the why.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a small village on the North Downs in Kent. I still live there.
Same village?
Yeah, still live there.
Brilliant.
You know, I mean, I was christened in the church, and that's where I live. I suppose looking back at the 60s, it looks like a different time. Yeah. I can sort of still see Mum with the beehive and, all those things, and the Beatles and all of the Georgie Best and all of that. I suppose my family were a very traditional, old school English family. I think my mother's family tree, you can go back to sort of before the Normans, My father was a soldier and a stockbroker. His father before him had been a soldier and a stockbroker. My mum's side of the family, my grandfather had been a big boss at Scotland Yard.
Okay.
So, they were, I think there was a very strong sense from being young.
And both sort of in a service environment, I guess.
Very much so. Yeah, very much so. Very patriotic people, all of them. Immensely patriotic people.
So that was ingrained in you?
Without any shadow of a doubt. And there was a sense of, actually, there was a belief that there was such a thing as English culture. Yeah. But community, Mike. What I grew up with was community. Yeah. Everybody knew each other. Regardless of background or class, everyone knew each other. There were common shared goals. And if, the milk hadn't been taken in next door because the old boy, you go and knock on the door and see that he was okay. And of course, there were rivalries, but generally, living in communities, people cared about each other. So that's how I grew up. And I was very fortunate, I think, in one regard. I managed to get a place at Dulwich College.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which was really a very important part of my life. It was, at the time, it was academically super selective.
Yeah. It's still hard to get into it.
How the blooming hell I managed to get in, I'll never know. And that was a great place to go to school.
And were you a studious student, or were you a bit anti-control?
No, I was a bit Jack the Lad, But I mean, there were subjects I enjoyed and I excelled at, and subjects I loathed, and I totally ignored them. Right. But I enjoyed the life of the school. Again, that sense of community, getting involved with sport, getting involved with societies, getting involved with current affairs. But what it taught me, and I think kids are missing this, when I first went there, a lot of the men that taught us had, commanded tanks, flown Spitfires. I mean, we had huge respect for these men. Huge respect for these men. But what I learned all through school was the power of argument, debate, critical thinking. Critical thinking was drilled into us. Here is an issue. Here are two very different approaches to how you deal with it. But you're big and ugly enough to make your own mind up on this. And I fear today that we're actually brainwashing kids and not teaching them critical thinking.
Well, and certainly not giving them the freedom to debate if they want to debate strongly.
Yeah.
And actually, one of the things that infuriated me when my daughter was at school, the oldest one, is they said, we want to debate on it was the Brexit issue. But they weren't allowed to put anything that was connected to Brexit up in the schoolhouse. So we want to debate, but you've got to think like this.
Yeah.
And that worries me about schools, that there is a very left agenda in most schools.
I didn't have that. I suppose I was a bit precocious, really. I mean, I was a bit grown up before my time. By the time I was 18, I just wanted to get out.
Right.
I'd outgrown school, I think. And I had two decisions. One, I thought about joining the army. I was an Army Cadets for 5 years. I thought a career as an Army officer was something I'd really enjoy. And I would have done that. In fact, I went for the Army interview. I would have done it, but Mrs. Thatcher had got elected in 1979. Exchange controls had been abolished. Yeah. Suddenly there was this thing called the yuppie. Young, upwardly mobile, driving their Porsches, living their nightclubbing, boozing. I thought, I've got to go and do that. So I skipped university, went straight into the city.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, went straight into the City of London, aged 18. Worked on the London Metal Exchange, an extraordinary place with, a combination.
How did you join that without a degree, or was it more possible then? Or because now I suspect you'd struggle to get into an exchange.
Hardly anybody had. I mean, half of them haven't got O levels. It was about trading. It was about numbers. It was about people. It was about relationships. That was how the whole, that commodity world worked. Oh, now you need a double first in mathematics.
Yeah.
I mean, a very different world. So I did that, and I loved it. I've got some regrets about it. I mean, I drank way too much, way too much. I mean,
but that was probably the norm back then, was it? In those environments,
everybody drank too much, but I drank way too much.
Right. Okay.
Looking back, I'm very lucky to have come out the other end of that. A lot of my friends aren't alive.
Right. Okay.
A lot of my friends are not alive. The number of premature deaths has been horrendous. So, I've got this image that's always been pictured with a pint, and I love a drink, but I always say to people, don't glorify heavy drinking.
No.
But that was how we lived. And then I was ambitious. I wanted to be successful financially, but I also just loved the lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I think people now would say, "Oh my goodness me, it was male dominated. It was this, it was that." Look, I loved it. It was what it was.
You were successful though, and
I did.
You were
okay.
earning much higher than average income.
It was a very it was a very cyclical business. That basically in commodities, metals, once every 15, 20 years. You get a bull market.
Yeah.
You get when the price of copper or whatever it is goes through the roof, everyone makes a fortune.
But when you've got that, and so you got this bright future ahead, you've learnt to play the game. You've whether it was too much drinking on some nights, you've built amazing relationships and that socialising and everything. Then you decide to go into politics.
I was very well known. Very well known.
Sometimes for the right reasons, sometimes not.
It's all right. Excuse me. No. I was very well known, and basically I was waiting for the bull market.
Right.
The bull market came in 2004, lasted for 4 or 5 years. A lot of my mates are on the Sunday Times rich list.
Right.
These are people who have made hundreds of millions.
And that's what I say. You when I look back at what I understand to be your career, you could have very easily stayed that. You wouldn't have had some of the hate that you have to deal with, and I realised politics is a very nasty game, especially if you're not toeing the line. But despite that, you chose to go into politics. Where did that come from?
It was really interesting. It was. I was always, and actually, when you traded commodities, all you talked about was politics and world affairs because it
affects everything.
Because the things that move prices.
Yeah.
So I've been a news hound all of my life. I think my critical thinking skills that I was taught at school were very valuable. Don't take anything on face value. Why is that article in that paper? Why have they put that? What do they mean? You know, all that stuff. Basically, Mike, and this is what I've learned. In 1990, we joined the exchange rate mechanism. It was the last days of Thatcher. We pegged sterling against a basket of euro currencies, predominantly the euro, and I thought it was utterly cretinous. And I remember the next day going up to London on a train, pile of newspapers. The trade unions supported it. The CBI and IOD supported it. The Tory party supported it. The Labour party supported it. The Liberal Democrats. Everyone supported it. And I thought, this is cobblers. This is going to be a disaster. And lo and behold, 2 years later, we crashed out of the exchange rate mechanism. Record business repossessions that year. Record house repossessions that year. And you know something? I thought maybe I've discovered what I'm good at.
Right.
I can be a commodity trader. Thousands of people, tens of thousands of people could be commodity traders, and maybe I'd hit the big time, or maybe I'd just be comfortably well off.
Yeah.
I said, but I've suddenly realised I'm able to see things.
And
I'm not sounding arrogant about this, but I'm able to see things. I'm able to see when the herd is getting things wrong. And I realised then that the entire political class were taking us down a road towards a European state where we'd lose our currency, we'd lose everything. I was viscerally opposed to it on the grounds of sovereignty, but economically, what I saw trading commodities was a big world. When the phone rang, it might be Paris or Frankfurt, but it was more likely to be Singapore or Santiago.
Well, and that's really interesting on a couple of fronts. I mean, a lot of kids, or certainly as a kid, I was taught the emperor's clothes fable kind of thing. And, you know, he's naked, but everyone is convinced that he's got a beautiful set of clothes. And, you know, a lone voice says, but he's naked kind of thing. Oh, you're stupid. You must be missing it. You must be missing it. That's now a recognised mental health condition. The emperor's clothes that we follow like sheep. And so firstly is that we are easy to be drawn and to follow blindly, and it is blindly. And secondly, the degree to which people amass and attack the minute you're doing anything that challenges that status quo.
Yes.
And you said about papers, the critical thinking, one of the things you said was you would read them and you would think, oh, why would they be doing that? Well, actually, the average person reads the papers and believes it's fact. They don't challenge. They don't read a different opposite newspaper to see if there's a different story on that issue or a different angle on that issue. They blindly accept.
Well, they do, and you see, so I began to think, okay, I can do this. I can see things differently. I'm not part of the crowd. I never have been actually. And then, so 1993, Maastricht goes through. It's all over. It's all over. We've given up. We've decided this is our future. And I got together with a group of academics, and we founded UKIP, the party. And then I went out and gave a couple of speeches. I was terrified. Absolutely terrified.
And if people saw you in any environment, they'd think that you were the most natural
The first
speaker.
speech I gave, it was in 93. I was absolutely terrified.
Right.
But you know what happened?
Go on.
I came off stage, I said, I love this. I'd found the thing that I was good at. I was 29, 30, but up until that moment in time, I thought I knew what I was good at. But I hadn't found it. And I realised what I could do was communicate. What I could do actually was to get other human beings to listen to me. And so kind of, I think when you find what you're good at in life, it becomes a bit of a drug.
But I think in addition to what you're good at, I mean, it's interesting because yesterday I was interviewing Mark Wright from The Apprentice, and one of the things he said, he did doing jobs. Then he found his passion. And it was interesting. You said you walked off that stage and you loved it. And it's very easy then to overcome fears or inexperience because you realise it's a passion. If you find your passion, I think you find your purpose. And if you find your purpose, you'll do whatever it takes to become successful in it to some degree.
You know, we always encourage young people to be good all-rounders. I say it's a load of rubbish. I say to young people, find the thing that you're good at, find the thing that you love, and then try and be as good at that as you possibly can.
But our system today makes them do, if they're not good at maths, it makes them do double maths.
Until they're 18.
They have to do more, not less of it. And then they're not allowed to do the thing they love.
It's crackers. I found what I was good at. Now, rationally, what I was facing was really, I mean, ludicrous. You know, all my friends, all my family thought I'd gone crackers.
Right.
You know, UKIP was about that big. you know?
Yeah.
But I just had an absolute belief, and I realised then, perhaps what I'd not done properly in the 80s, which I think I'd partied harder than I'd worked, and maybe if I'd got that, I could have maybe moved on a bit quicker. But I realised there are no shortcuts to this, and I'm going to say this to you: nobody in contemporary British politics has travelled the miles, worked the hours, given the speeches, or done what I did all through the 1990s, all through the noughties, you know.
Or being consistent in what they say or do, because I notice how flim-flam they are. You know, we're definitely not doing that, we're not doing that, we're not doing that. Okay, we'll do that. Yeah. Oh, we're now doing this, we're doing this, we're doing this. Okay, we won't. I mean, I don't want to make this about Brexit, but even in Brexit, you know, there's a lot of belief that Boris wasn't a fan of Brexit until he realised it was a bandwagon to get on, you know, and then it's like he's Brexit's biggest fan and Brexit's saviour. Yeah. And yet in the reality, I believe, to the strength that I'd say I know, that he just knew that was a side to take. To do what he needed to win where he needed to be.
I was conviction, Mike. I mean, it was exactly 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this month, 10 years ago, when I shot to prominence, UKIP had a sweeping success in the English county elections. We almost won the Eastleigh by-election. And suddenly, I go from the bloke who catches the train up to London and a few people nod to having to have security and drivers. It happens overnight. But it took me 20 years to get there. So whenever I'm asked by young people, you know, how do you achieve success? I always say you've got to find the thing that you love and where you have ability. You've got to work harder than anybody else. You know, do you think Tiger Woods just became a great golfer because he was good at it? No, he worked his blooming socks off, you know. And the third thing I tell everybody, and this is perhaps the hardest thing, you need patience.
Right.
If your idea is right, if it's a business idea or whatever it is, if your idea is right, its time will come. Which
for someone who's ambitious or an entrepreneur,
it's hard.
Patience is probably the hardest thing.
I think it is.
Because they want it tomorrow, they want it now.
Yeah,
you know?
I think it is. And then and then if you try and rush things, you probably make mistakes.
But that must have been a form of torture for you. I mean, your longest serving MEP, 29 years?
21 years.
From any country in the world. No one ever served longer. And, you know, it's not just me. Many pundits around the world say, in some ways, you're the most successful politician in Britain, even though you might not have been an MP.
So this is interesting, because you're talking with this podcast about success.
It's how you get there. Yeah.
But I want to just talk a bit about success. What is success? When I was 29, I thought success was a large house in the country, a Bentley. I thought of success in material possessions.
I mean, I think many young people do.
Now I'm pushing 60, and I've done all these different things in my life. I see success as being a very different thing. Success, above all, success is about you being happy with yourself, that you've done in your life all you can do to achieve your dreams. We all have dreams. We all have dreams, and we must all pursue our dreams.
And the older I get, the more I realise it's about the journey, not the destination as well.
Well,
because it's a long way.
It's like climbing mountains.
You
think it's going to be, when I get to the top, it's going to be fantastic. You get there, oh, it's a bit... It's a really funny one. So for me, you know, I mean, financially, what I did was catastrophic.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time that referendum was over, I was literally skint. I had nothing.
Because you'd put everything in, not just physically, but emotionally, financially.
I had 4 kids, etc. So I've not been successful in that way, but have I been successful at completely turning around the UK political agenda by 180 degrees? You bet your life I have. Not on my own, because lots of people believed in me and helped me.
But even those that didn't believe in you, what I think is good, and it sort of comes back to debate and critical thinking and so on, is more people than ever at the younger end that weren't voting, at the older end that had stopped voting,
Yeah.
thinking it's not worth, more people than ever were engaging in politics. Even if they disagreed with you, they were disagreeing with you.
Yeah.
And they were thinking, my vote is important. And at the
Yeah.
end of the day, if we can get more people talking politics, they'll understand it affects every area of their life. And if we can get them thinking or arguing or debating, they'll start to realise, am I making that decision because my dad did, or because my mates do, or a musician that I like has said think this way or vote this way, or do I really think that?
Yeah.
And really, politics to me, or debate or conflict leads to clarity, is about starting the discussion. And I don't mind people who disagree with me, and I know you don't.
Nor do I. No.
Because that's healthy, and actually it's more enjoyable, you know.
Mr. Juncker, who was president of the European Commission, and I used to sit next to him in the European Parliament. I was seat 20. There was a little gap in the middle, and he was there. I mean, we couldn't have been more diametrically opposed politically, and yet we had enormous fun.
Yeah.
Enormous fun and mutual respect for each other. And that is important. This is the other thing that's going wrong. With the loss of critical thinking, we've got a lot of young people now who believe this point of view is virtuous and good. The other point of view is evil.
Because it's been defined for them that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's very scary. And you look at the splits in America,
Yeah.
and you see them beginning to happen here. And that's really, really worrying.
And social media is being weaponized to create
because
that
the
more,
algorithm does that. The algorithm reinforces all of that. But it's becoming not I disagree with you, Mike Greene, but I don't think you should have the right to say what you think.
No, exactly.
And this is scary stuff. So no, open, free, democratic debate, critical thinking, these things really matter.
Just on that, I mean, one of the interesting things is I put out a little video short a couple of weeks ago. It was snowing in the UK, as you remember.
Yeah.
And I had a Zoom meeting. It had been planned for weeks. We'd been waiting for it. And this Zoom meeting got cancelled because it was snowing. And I thought, and so it was a bit of a pun on the snowflake generation. Yeah. Who the hell cancels a Zoom meeting because it's snowing? But it enraged some people. They're thinking, well, what if their pet's ill? And that enraged me. And I'm thinking, well, you don't go to work because your bloody pet's ill.
I mean, did you see?
know, it's like, for goodness
Did you
sake.
see this week the European Central Bank in Frankfurt? That apparently there's mass staff protests, severe uptick in stress and mental illness because they're now being expected to work between 2 and 3 days a week.
Oh, for God's sake.
So actually, I tell you what, if you're a young person out there and you're prepared to get up in the morning, make yourself presentable, work hard, I think there's more opportunity out there now for you than there ever was.
Yes, exactly.
I think actually, and that's for whether men, women, and it's interesting with all the stuff that I do with media and what I've done in politics. One of the things I'm proudest of is I've been able to take young people with no advantage in their lives at all, often without any real qualifications. But I've been able to help them become really successful in what they've done and pursuing those really important golden rules. And I never forget. I never forget. My last day at school. The headmaster calls me in. Glass of sherry, you see.
Oh, nice.
He says, well, Farage, you're a terrible disappointment to us, as you're always going to be. We'd liked you to have gone off to university, but you're off to the city. He said, now remember, when you work in the city, you make sure that your hair's neat, your fingernails are cut, your shoes are polished, and you call everyone sir until they tell you to stop being so blooming stupid.
Right.
Be well turned out, be polite, be personable. Those things still matter.
I hope you're enjoying Success is a System. Every Tuesday we launch it on all podcast platforms and on YouTube. Drop us a note and tell us who you would like to see or hear on Success is a System, or what subjects you'd like us to cover to help you and your business. Success is a System. Like, subscribe, and make sure you get it every Tuesday for great lessons and systems that have made people wealthy, healthy, and successful. But that is education. People think education is often just the academia or the facts or the subjects, when really it's how can I live my life? How can I be happier, more successful in whatever you derive to be success? And I mean, touching on education, Elon Musk said a week or two ago that basically school and universities time is limited because they're becoming so narrow in the way they teach, which is not right for so many disaffected young people or people that have got dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADHD, because they can't sit and listen for an hour or two in that environment. That doesn't, it's not within them because of that. And he said the beauty of the internet is everything's out there. If you don't relate to this person, you can listen to that person. If it's going too fast for you, you can slow it down. You can play it on 0.7 speed. You can listen to it again. If it's boring, you can speed it up. You can move on. And I worry about the community element being a loss to that, but I can see that education can't stay the same. I mean, I saw a thing a week or so ago, and it said how we communicated 200 years ago, and it was a letter and a postman. It took 53 days to get to somebody, and then it said how we travelled, and it was a horse, and it evolved through to electric car, and so on. So all these different things, and then it said how we taught 400 years ago. Kids sitting at a classroom bored to tears. How we teach now, kids sitting in a classroom bored to tears. Nothing has changed.
No, I mean, look, and also you can learn at your own pace. And there are a lot of people who now get educated later in life because they're not ready for it at 16 or 18 or whatever it may be. It is, as you say. What I don't want to see, though, Mike, is a whole generation of people who spend their whole time in their bedrooms on their smartphones or their laptops. And I think there's a little bit of that creeping in.
And the sport would be missed, which is really
well. You see, I'm a sports nut, and I think that sports teach you an awful lot about yourself, and I really do. Sport teaches you about failure,
which is important
because more often than not, we fail at sport.
Well, I wrote the book Failure Breeds Success, and so many people said you can't call it failure breeds. If the word failure is in the title, nobody will.
No.
We fail all the time.
No, it's part of life. It's part of life,
and it's part of success.
Yeah, I had plenty of failures, I can assure you, politically, but in the end, we got there.
Yes,
in the end, we did it. And I tell you something. I am actually one of the most contented people now you could meet.
Well, and I always felt even when you were at the height of being attacked. You had a kind of almost a shield of, I know what I'm doing it for the right reasons, the right intent. I mean, the biggest thing that came up against me, against you, against other people in that field was racism. It's you're racist kind of thing, and I couldn't get across that actually aren't we being more prejudiced to say we're gonna enclose ourselves in this little EU as to instead of we're going to open ourselves up to the world, and if the better qualified person is going to come from Canada or anywhere in the Commonwealth or India, shouldn't we at least give them all consideration rather than we've got to give a French person it or a German person it or just because we're part of this club?
But that's the way.
That's jobs for the boys, isn't it?
That's how the consensus works, isn't it? The consensus wraps itself in its own comfort blanket and just attacks with abuse those that threaten it and those that challenge it. I think also one of the reasons I was able to do all of this is because, and I really mean this, but I'd survived an horrendous car accident in 1985.
And a helicopter accident.
I was hospitalised for months. Shouldn't have survived that. I was very, very, unbelievably lucky to live through that. Then there was the plane crash.
Oh, plane crashes.
Yeah, which, pretty smacked up in that. I even had cancer. I've done it all, So kind of I think there's a little bit of me that said,
the universe has got a job for you.
I realise what's really important in life is actually being here. And therefore you've got to... I followed a dream. One that looked completely unachievable, unattainable, but there were bits of aggravation. But I enjoyed the journey because I was doing what I was good at. I was doing what I had a passion for. Yeah. And I can't think, we're only here once. You think about, the human lifespan. We're not here for very long. And I think, and I always say to young people, if you've got a dream, follow it. If you succeed, it's fantastic. But if you don't succeed, at least you tried.
And at least you failed doing something you love rather than failing doing something you hate.
Absolutely.
Or even succeeding doing something you hate is probably not as good as failing doing something you love. That's an interesting debate in and of itself.
I meet school friends and I meet people I was in the city with, and I quite often say to these guys that I know that are on the rich list, you've just done so well, you've been amazing. They're all jealous of me. Because I've had more life experiences.
Well, and I have an idea as well, how many global leaders are always asking you for advice on how to connect with people and how you did what you did, because win, lose or draw, none of it would have happened without that almost professional agitation or challenge or debate and so on. So is that one of your, if you had a system for success or life, how do you push through failure, hate, attacks? People are trying to physically attack you as well as verbally. Also, how do you, what that would destroy a lot of people? How do you get through that?
Yeah, it does. There's plenty of people in politics have been completely obliterated by it and walked away and never come back. You have to have a very clearly defined goal. You have to know, what is it that I'm trying to achieve?
And that comes up again and again and again with successful people.
What's the objective? Because if you haven't got a clear objective, you can quite easily be distracted. You can quite easily be put off by the pitfalls and difficulties that come along the way, and you probably won't work as hard if the objective is not clear. You know, in some ways, this is easier for sportsmen than it is for others. You know, you're a footballer. The ambition's very simple. You want to play for England. You know, you're a golfer. You want to win the British Open. You know, sportsmen do have very, very clear sets of goals. I think for people in business, it's not often as easy as that. They want to be successful, but they're not quite sure where they really want to get to.
And the rules are changing all the time, and the goalposts are changing often. Of
course, and I think actually it's very interesting. I think the world for entrepreneurs, in some ways, government makes it more and more difficult with every year that goes by. I think what's happening right now, with a complete refusal to think about IR35 rules, you know, for self-employed contractors, the way the tax burden is rising, these are not easy times. You know, I mean, the whole world's becoming corporatized. The giant corporations control more and more of the global
and yet 90%
economy.
Of the businesses in the UK are less than 10 employees.
Oh, I know. And there's no one speaking for them.
No.
Westminster doesn't represent them
Could that be your next challenge? Or?
Well, Mike, I'm all for the little man, the little woman, you know, taking chances, doing things. I think that's how real wealth is generated. And I think in the 80s, in Britain and America, we saw this explosion of individuals taking risk.
Is this a Maggie effect, do you think, and similar?
Maggie was the leader. Ronnie Reagan was the leader in America. Their leadership was a part of it, but it was also a revolt against what had happened in the previous 20 or 30 years.
Of controls? Or
taxes at levels that were, you know, I mean, don't forget, 1979.
Mortgages at 15%.
Income tax over £38,000 a year in 1979 was 83%.
Christ.
83%. We've forgotten this. Humans need incentives. And I'm concerned, as I say, I'm concerned, and what you're trying to do here is to get people with an entrepreneurial idea in their mind to try and think, what can I learn from other people?
Exactly.
What can I pick up from other people that I can apply to my situation? And I'm pleased you're doing it, because do you know what? Government's not doing it.
No, it's true. It seems to me that more governments all around the world are more about control rather than enabling.
Of course, and that's why the big corporations virtually own the politicians. Because it suits both.
Well, I don't even know if you need the word virtually in there.
No, but you see, it suits both.
Yeah.
I saw this in Brussels. You know, the big businesses had direct links to the European Commission, who proposed the legislation. What no big business wants is a small or medium-sized challenger coming into the marketplace with new ideas or cheaper prices.
Well, because they don't follow the rules.
You know, So, you know, you can succeed as an entrepreneur. There's no question about it. Of course you can. In some ways, because so much of the world stopped thinking at all, your opportunities are maybe as good as they've ever been, but you are on your own.
No, it's true, and it's very lonely as well.
Can be.
I mean, I mentor about 45 businesses at the moment. Most of them are SMEs, and probably 30 of them are in the trade sector. So they're carpenters, plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, scaffolders, and so on. And often they don't they don't even share with their life partners because, they can't share down because they don't want to tell the people who work for them, it's really tight, I don't know how I'm going to pay the wages next week. They don't want to share it with their partner because they don't want to worry their partner that we might not be able to pay the mortgage next month. So they're in this kind of world of isolation and anxiety. And as you say, there's very little coming from government to help them. In fact, more and more, they're thinking taxes are going to go up. I'm going to have more controls. I mean, some of the controls around health and safety and diversity, and you want to be open to all things.
But it's hard.
But it's really hard to run a business.
Very hard.
If you're going to be considerate when someone's pet's ill.
It is quite lonely. I think running your own business it can be quite lonely. Funny thing is, the more successful you become, the higher you rise, the lonelier it gets.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting.
It's a funny one.
I find myself, the more I do these, the more I learn, and my brain goes into hyperdrive. But one of the businesses I built with a guy called Tom Fender, who went to Dulwich as well, I think he lives in Dulwich now. One of the reasons, a big reason we were successful, and one of the reasons the banks and everyone else loved us, is it was a joint partnership. So if one of us was down, the other would lift them. If one of us was going to do something stupid, the other would say, hang on a minute. So it wasn't lonely. It wasn't so stressful. You could get a break. There was more challenge over whether we were making the right decisions or rash decisions and so on. And it was just enough of you have to be the right partnership, I think.
Yeah.
But to this day, I often prefer and recommend partnerships over solo leadership.
Yes, and that can happen. But if you're on your own, and this takes me back,
lonely
and this takes me back to my main point, really, of this whole conversation. If you're on your own, it can be lonely.
Yeah,
it can be frightening. There are things you can't even tell people that work for you, or as you say, the person you live with. That's why, unless you've got an absolutely clear goal, a clear destination, a lot of people fall by the wayside.
No, and one of the things that is a common thread through all of the people I've spoke to is set goals, write them down, set a plan to get to them, be quite limited in your goals. So don't have 10 goals because you're juggling and you're going to drop some, and you're probably not going to be expert in one. So have quite a singular goal. You had yours, and the more I can get entrepreneurs to narrow their focus, the quicker and more successful and less stressful the journey becomes for them.
I'm sure of that.
So you made the transition into politics.
Yeah.
Have you ever regretted it?
Oh, there are times when I've woken up in the morning. I remember one day, it was about a month before the European elections of 2014, and my phone rang very early Sunday morning. And it was the first Sunday for months I hadn't had to go to London to do, the MAR programme or whatever it was. And it was my lawyer. God, bloody hell, so 7:30 Sunday morning.
It's important.
The lawyer's on the phone. And he said something really important to me. He said, don't buy the papers. Don't turn a computer on. Don't bother with your phone. He said, just go out for a walk. Go down the pub. Have a few pints. Just forget about it. He said, if you read this stuff they've written about you, he said, it'll start to dent your confidence. And I've never forgotten that. Of course, there were some horrible moments. Things that were written, things that were said.
Lies, as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you a joke. I was at a school the other day, sixth form, and I could see some of the teachers weren't best pleased I was there. And one of the kids said, what's it like in politics? I said, I wouldn't recommend it. I said, they write terrible things about you. I said, they wrote I was a smoker, a gambler, a drinker, a womanizer. I said, the worst bit is it was all true. The kids loved it. No, I mean, if what people write about you is true, then it's fine. But you experienced it with the racist jibe and everything. Look, do you know what?
Well, and The Guardian wrote outright lies. And I remember Chris advising me at the time, and I was going, I'm going to sue them, I'm going to do all this. And Chris at the time said, Mike, that's exactly what they want you to do. Yeah. You need to focus now. They want you to lose your focus. They've got a lot of deep pockets if you try and sue them. It'll take you off your game. They just want you to lose. And then you look at I looked at some of those journalists that I wanted to sue, and I just thought, move on, Mike. But they are often political activists that are a journalist, and they're not. I mean, there's some of them who are TV.
You've got to just, look. I had down moments doing it. Of course, I did. nobody on these journeys doesn't go through some pretty profound, thoughtful times. You do.
Yeah.
It's part of being a human being. Do I regret it? Not one bit. I've lived. I mean, what I did for that quarter of a century or so, what I did led me to meet some of the most incredible people in this country, in the world. And I tell you what, I had more fun than most doing it.
So if you went back to that decision when you was at school, leaving school, going into the city, and you were to chat to yourself again then, would you have gone straight into politics?
No.
You'd still do it the same?
Oh, the advantage I had, having run my own company.
And had a proper job as well.
But I'd run my own company. I was employing the guys and girls that worked for me. Yeah. I knew what it was to set a business up. I knew what risk was. I was pretty up to speed with global affairs and finances. No. Any young person says to me, should I go into politics? I say, wait until you've done something and achieved some level of success first. Yeah. You know what? I wouldn't change. I mean, of course there are things in life I've done that, I'd rather I hadn't. But overall, no regrets. No. Pretty happy. And now I've now moved to a new career. I'm now doing media. I did radio for a bit. I'm doing telly.
And you seem to be loving that. I mean,
loving every minute of it.
Yeah, genuine. Yeah.
Loving every minute of it. But it's using that skill set that I discovered in my late 20s. It's when I found the thing in life that I was actually good at.
And that's where we're going in the future, are we? I'm conscious we've got about 5 minutes
left.
Well,
do you know, I mean, look, I want to be somebody that influences national debate. I want to be someone that challenges blind consensus.
Yeah.
Which I love doing.
I hope you keep doing that.
I'm very happy to be on my own against with a whole herd coming. I don't mind any of that. Yeah. As for politics, I may do it again. I may not. I don't know. I haven't really decided. It depends a little bit how the cards fall. But whatever I do, whether it's here or in America, I'm going to be involved in current affairs. I'm going to be involved in debate. Yeah. I'm going to be involved in what I believe is sending the world in a better direction. We've just come through a period of lockdowns. We've just come through a period where government took away our liberties in a way I'd never done before. We're now learning that the health costs of lockdown far outweigh any risks of that virus spreading.
And the economic costs.
The economic costs, the psychological costs, the social costs, all of it. So, I think that government and the way in which we're ruled needs to be constantly challenged. And Ronnie Reagan once said, and I love Ronnie, once said, years and years ago, the problem with freedom is you have to fight for it perpetually.
Yeah, and people don't want to fight often.
And I think he was right, So that's what I'm going to go on doing. Who knows?
But just a quick question in there, because it only sprang to mind as you were saying that. But I was thinking the other day about these 15-minute cities or communities or exclusion zones.
Don't start me on that.
I mean, that's frightening.
Can you run for another hour or so and then what? You see, I've still got the same energy and passion. Again, they want to control every aspect of our lives, take away our privacy. We are the most surveilled country in the Western world. Has it reduced crime? Has it made people's lives better? No. All it means is that if you're driving your car at 2:00 in the morning at 24 miles an hour down the embankment, you'll get a fine. So I'm going to be
more taxes.
ULEZ expansion.
Listen, I'll help. Well, funny enough, we went just up the road when we were coming here, and that looked like it was a ULEZ zone as well. I'm thinking, this is Dartford. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Where's that going to?
Yeah, it's coming.
And too many controls. But what I like to do at these things as well is have a quick fire, this or that, this or that, this or that. You got to choose one way or the other. But it's not part of that. But before I get into that, which party do you think are going to win the next election?
Labour.
Yeah.
I think what's happened in Scotland.
Sadly, I agree with you, but I think it's necessary.
Scotland has turned the arithmetic around. It's very difficult to think that Labour won't get 25 seats in Scotland, whereas they have one now. Yeah. It's very hard to believe that much of the red wall, which voted Brexit because it wanted proper border controls, is seeing just the sheer abuse of these young men crossing the English Channel. Red wall's gone. Scotland's going to go the way of Labour. There's no enthusiasm for Starmer whatsoever. He's not. I mean, Blair was. You can disagree with what he did, but Blair was an inspirational human being. Blair had that ability to get up and speak, and people think, "Wow, the guy's got a vision. He wants to go somewhere." Starmer's got none of that. Labour will win. Then the Conservative Party will face a big choice. Do they do what they did in '97, which is to wave the white flag of surrender and become ever more like Labour?
Yeah, more central. Yeah.
Or do they do a 1970s and choose a Thatcher? And that will be a very big part of determining where our country goes, and maybe a big part of determining what I do.
Yeah. In the next decade, do you think we'll get a third party seriously?
There is an appetite. There's
already a third party, but I've discounted them. I was thinking a new third party, a new party.
I think the appetite, Mike, for electoral reform is now big. I am now a complete radical. Oh, no. I'd smash up this voting system. It doesn't blooming well work. Yeah. All we do is vote for the one we dislike a bit less than the other one. Yeah. The House of Lords is an abomination, being filled up with all the mates of prime ministers. Yeah. No, I want radical.
They tried to buy you off with that as well.
They did. I told them where to go. And what the referendum showed you in 2016 was that the Westminster is detached from the rest of the country on really big issues. They're even more detached now than they were. So I'd love to see a direct democracy mechanism like they have in Switzerland, where ordinary citizens, if there's a really big issue, can force a vote on these things.
Yeah, that's good.
So, I think our fast past the post system won't be here in 10 years, to answer your question. Politics is going to change completely.
Good.
And Westminster will be more reflective of the country as a whole than it is today. I can't wait.
Brilliant. So if I can finish with a couple of things. I want to do 12 quickfire this or that.
Oh, blimey.
But before I do that, are there, and you've already given us so many nuggets, thank you, are there 2 or 3 things that you would say, if you were speaking to a sixth form, that these are my tips for life, for a happy, healthy, prosperous and productive or satisfied life?
Follow your dreams. Work hard. Have clear, achievable goals, and have as much fun as you possibly can along with the hard work. Otherwise, what's the point?
People forget the fun, don't they?
Yeah.
Well, look, let's do the quick fire then. So firstly, slight build on what we were doing. Boris or Rishi?
Gosh, I suppose it's a really hard one. As Prime Minister, Rishi. As somebody to spend time with, Boris.
Yeah, well, I think that's why people are torn often. But okay, we could go off on that. But so, risk or safety?
A risk.
Big picture or detail?
Big picture.
Individual or team?
Without a team, no individual can succeed. You have to have a team.
But a team's made up of individuals.
The teams are made up of individuals, but I think I could not have done what I'd done without a very dedicated group of people with me.
Great answer.
And I love teams.
Competition or cooperation?
Oh, competition at every step of the way.
Good. Status quo or new challenges?
Oh, new challenges.
I could have guessed some of these. But tradition or innovation?
Without tradition, you have no sense of who you are or what you are, and therefore you can't understand the significance of innovation.
So I guess one's foundational and one's the building block.
Exactly.
Yeah, great. Planned or spontaneous?
Oh, spontaneous. You tell me a good planned party you've been to. No, they just happen.
Yeah, the best ones. True. Perfect or quick?
Well,
these are meant to be quite hard.
Ultimately, you've got to aim for perfect.
Okay. Speedboat or ferry?
Speedboat.
Classroom or experiential education?
Experience.
TV or Netflix / Prime? A traditional TV, terrestrial.
I have to say TV because I'm working for GB News. I've got no choice.
That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike.
If you've enjoyed watching this, do like, do subscribe, do share. We look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much,
Cheers.
Nigel. It's always a pleasure. We'll see you again soon.